Thank you very much, Chairman. Our science was dedicated to digital science, and it is very good to be the last reporter of the table, because it is very interesting for me to see that a number of the subjects that we touched in a different domain, from the one of innovation and the one of policy making, came exactly to the same keywords. In fact, we started by recognizing that there are a number of trends that are currently happening, not only technological trends, like the deployment of electronic infrastructures, the internet, and so on and so forth, that create possibilities to do science differently, to communicate science differently, and to use the results of science differently. It's not only the technology that influences this. There is also demography, as you mentioned before. There has never been that many researchers in the planet as there is today. In China, there are more PhD students than the labor force in the US. And we are confronted with numbers that are huge. We are confronted with other type of statistics, like, for example, 90% of the scientific papers that are published are never cited. Right. So all this influences the way science is done, the way science is communicated, and the way the results of science are used. We then looked at this from different perspectives, because the speakers were coming from different perspectives. We looked at it from a media perspective, we looked at it from a funder perspective, we looked at it from an infrastructure services provider perspective, and finally we looked at it from the perspective of an integrator of different stakeholders, which is Atomium culture. What is funny is that the trends that emerged were similar to the different perspectives. So there was a trend of trust that appeared. I mean, in order that science is done on networks, science is exchanged on networks, a culture of sharing and co-creation emerges. Scientists need to trust the tools that they have, the tools and the services that they have at their disposal. There was also the dimension of education, because we cannot separate science from education. Science and education have always been together. And we need to have a coherent approach with education in order that people have the skills that are needed in order to do science differently. We have also come to the conclusion that we should not, and myself, I'm not talking for the other of the panels, I'm an humble civil servant, we should not be the European bureaucrats saying to the scientists how they should do science. This is not the purpose. The purpose is just to say there is a process that is happening out there and we should be catalysts of change. And it's a very delicate role, because the idea of throwing the baby away with the water of the bath is there. I mean, there are disciplines where what people call today slow science will continue to be the way that we do science. And there are other disciplines that will probably even do not exist today and will emerge from transdisciplinarity. So we are talking at a very large number of things. Then the debate that took place afterwards touched again the problem of trust and security of the networks, in particular regarding mechanisms for identification of scientists and so on and so forth. This also emerged in another dimension that we have analyzed, which is citizen science. Citizen science is by no means a way to replace science, right? It's probably a complementary way, because there is a dimension of education. And if you need to be educated in order to be a scientist, and not all citizens are educated in the way that they can become scientists. So the panel came to the conclusion that it was probably preferable to call this citizen engagement in science rather than citizen science. There was another key word that emerged all over the interventions, that was the word metrics. The word metrics appeared in different contexts. Metrics in order that in the media the journalists can choose the stories that they tell to the people that are the best ones and not only the most spectacular ones. So there needs to be a metrics on science, and we are talking about scientific media, of course. Then there is a metrics for the careers of the researchers, because we cannot be promoting collaborativeness, openness, without the right incentives in order that this happens. So the way metrics appear all over the place. Then came the discussion on the dimension of science, and we all agreed that science is global and not European. Nevertheless, the initiatives stay under the responsibility of those that take them, and therefore Europe has a role to play on this. Then there was a discussion about the business model for the scientific media and the relationship between public relations and media. The idea again, the solution that emerged was the metrics, because in order to make sure that the best science is published and not the most spectacular science. So the word metrics was a driving force all over the debate. It was a quite interesting debate by the variety of the perspectives, and it's a passionate subject, because the only thing that we did not agree on how to call it, because digital science is a company in the US, Science 2.0 is a trademark of a company in Europe, but we stayed with the concept without having found the right brand for it. And by the way, I take the occasion to publicize the consultation that we have launched, my DG and DG RTD, called Science 2.0, and to encourage you, it's still open till the end of September, so I encourage you to answer to that public consultation. That's all, Chair.